Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy days to join us and learn more about this exciting topic. My name is Sam Russem. I'm the Director of the Smart Manufacturing Practice at Grantek, and today we're going to be talking about the MES Digital Journey, specifically how to establish your company's digital transformation strategy. So let's get to it. So today's big idea is around the value of strategic planning and aligning your digital transformation strategy to your corporate goals and your value proposition. But really, this webinar is a lot about how to take ideas and turn them into actions. The problem with digital transformation and MES and Industry 4.0 isn't in convincing people that it's the next big important thing to be a competitive manufacturer. I'm not here today to convince you to modernize your plant. I'm assuming that you're here because you know that you want to modernize, and you know that the technology landscape today and in the next 5 years is drastically different than it's been over the last 20. So you may be here because you're having issues getting these initiatives off the ground. Could be that you've done 5 different pilots but no rollouts, or maybe you can't get procurement and senior leadership to sign on to your plan. So today what we're talking about is how you take a big idea, like how do we prepare for a new era of technology and manufacturing, and turn that into something that your company believes in and commits to and can execute against. So a couple of the takeaways that I hope that people have learned by the end of today's webinar is just a better understanding of what goes into making one of these digital transformation strategies. We're also going to spend a lot of time talking about the importance of alignment. So many Industry 4.0 projects don't reach their full potential due to a lack of definition and alignment with bigger picture goals of the organization. So are you in a market that values heavy customization, or are you competing with other companies that are providing competitive products at significantly lower costs? Identifying and understanding where and how your business wants to improve has huge implications for how you want to prioritize and select your smart manufacturing strategies. Of course, every project and initiative is expected to have a return on investment plan, so we're going to talk about how you can craft a compelling financial justification for Industry 4.0 projects for review with procurement teams. And we're all going to talk about picking the right technology to deploy. A lot of people I meet want to jump right into this step and start asking to compare and contrast different technology stacks right away. And I give the standard consulting answer that everyone loves to hate, which is, it depends. But in this case, it really does. And there's a lot of important steps to take in understanding that you need to gain before you jump into the technology and vendor selection. And we'll talk a little bit more about that too. Finally, we're also going to talk about some different deployment methodologies that you can think about what's going to fit best for your company and your company culture. A couple of quick just guidelines for the webinar today. Hopefully this all sounds appealing and it's you're still listening here and you're still on the webinar. So if that's all true, one of the first things I'll ask is that I personally, I know that I'm not always the best at it, is eliminating distractions during the webinar. I've been guilty of maybe checking an email or answering a quick Skype chat during a webinar that I'm attending, certainly not that I'm hosting. But I know it distracts me from the content of the webinar, and it's a slippery slope to missing a lot of the important stuff. I'm not the webinar police. I can't sit in your office and make sure you're paying attention. But if you do think this is valuable today, hopefully you can give it the time and attention that it deserves, and I'll do my best to keep things entertaining along the way. If you do get distracted or you need to get pulled away, we are going to be posting this webinar to our YouTube channel, or you can always reach out to us at Grantek, and we're happy to follow up with you on it. One of the ways I'm going to try to make good on that promise to be a little bit more entertaining is by asking for a little bit of interaction from your teams. So if by default, whenever you type into that chat, it's only going to be visible to me and the moderator. So there's a couple times in this session when I'm going to ask you to provide a little bit of feedback in the chat. You don't need to worry about things being shared with your competition or your contact information getting out there or anything like that, but it's a really great way to keep yourself informed and engaged, and helps me actually tailor some of the content and maybe some of the messaging to the things that you all are interested in. So you'll notice I have this little graphic writing away down in the corner. That is your cue that I'm asking for something that I would like for you to type into the chat. Next thing I'll ask is that you take a couple of notes. Again, this is all going to be posted online, so you don't need to write down every bullet point or everything that I say. So really try to focus more on the ideas around how you can apply this to your business and actions that you want to take based on this content. I truly hope that everyone in the webinar today walks away with at least one thing they want to take action on. I don't care if that's holding a meeting with your internal team, a call to me and Jeff the second this webinar ends, or just something you ponder during your commute in and out of the office. But I want this to be worth your time, and knowing that you can take action on this information is the best way to know that it's been valuable. Finally, I do want to mention that Grantek does have an offering around how we can help you with your digitalization roadmap that I'm going to talk about towards the end of the webinar. I just like to throw that out there so that we can get all of the groans out of the way now. It's not all built around this offering. I hope to give you a lot of tools, ideas, and resources that you can use whether or not you decide to work with Grantek on this journey. So hopefully you'll be able to get value out of this webinar no matter what. Also, just a quick introduction to me. Some people on this call I know that I've worked with for years and I talk to every week. Others might be the first time you've heard my voice, in which case, very nice to meet you. But my name is Sam Russem, again, the Director of Smart Manufacturing at Grantek. And that's admittedly and purposefully a pretty broad title. I like to say that my job is really around guiding our customers, our company at Grantek, and the industry as a whole towards ways that we can successfully implement modern technology into our manufacturing businesses. And I really like my job. It gives me a great opportunity to see different manufacturing environments, any engineer's dream, in my opinion, and look to the future of manufacturing technology from a very practical perspective. So if you're ever in Philadelphia, or if we're in a conference together, or if you have any other excuse to meet up, I love talking about this stuff. Don't hesitate to reach out to me. I've been at Grantek for over 10 years now with roots in automation programming, doing some implementation, practice management, and project management around data intelligence and reporting projects after that, which has led me to my current role as the Smart Manufacturing Director. Outside of work, I'm a proud Philadelphian. We're not all that bad, I swear. I have an awesome rescue dog who loves to take lots of naps, and I play a lot of guitar in my spare time just to get away from the screen every once in a while, but you'd think I'd be a lot better at it by now. And that's it. That's just kind of a quick intro to me that I wanted to get out there. So let's kind of get more into the meat of what we're talking about today and talk more about your digital transformation strategies. So first, why do we care? Again, I'm assuming that you're here today because we've identified that there is a lot of room for us to grow in the smart manufacturing and Industry 4.0 space. And one of the things that you'll certainly notice is there's a lot of kind of equivalent terms that people use for a lot of these. Really, I don't care if you call it Industry 4.0 or smart manufacturing, digital transformation, IIoT. It's really kind of describing that same core concept that we are in a new era of manufacturing technologies that change the way that we think about manufacturing. But unfortunately, we see a lot more companies and consultants talking about this than we do actually doing it. But I think that that's about to change. When we look at things like that classic Gartner adoption curve, I think we're getting out of that trough of disillusionment and into more of those value-added phases of the technology adaptation. So there's a couple of companies that have taken a leap of faith and they've kind of jumped in when things were early, and they've actually, some of them have seen a lot of really positive returns and have made some really great case studies around why we should focus on digital transformation, really signaling that it's time for the rest of the industry to start really focusing on this as well. And there's a lot of value in it too. So if you're being asked to adapt to corporate goals like highly customized products or lot size of one, just-in-time or lean manufacturing, reduce time to market for new products and new product introductions, or just to provide more insights to your workers and to your customers as opposed to just data and information. Those are all drivers that take you towards digital transformation. Today, really what I pose is that having a strategic plan aligned with your business goals and what your company values is one of the most important and most commonly overlooked steps towards beginning the journey to realize the success and the value of these digital transformation initiatives. And then we get to our first question of the day. So again, you can type into the chat over there on the side. What are some of your company's 5-year manufacturing goals and objectives? Do they relate to smart manufacturing and digital transformation, or do you have other goals that are also important too? It's so just general manufacturing goals. I'll also challenge you to try to think beyond cost if you can. Of course, we all want to try to reduce cost. It's a common theme across the business and it has been for years. So at risk of leading the witness, a couple of non-cost related things could be complying to new or newly emphasized regulations, managing the age shift of your manufacturing workers, where the people that know your process are the ones who are retiring, and the next generation just doesn't seem to get off their phones or kind of engage on how to take over the next step. Or maybe you're bringing previously offshore jobs back into North America. So just a couple of examples there. I'm going to give you all a minute and kind of see what shows up in the chat, and I'll take it from there. Don't be shy, everybody. Feel free to chat away. I have one good one around just kind of like managing internal organizations and kind of maybe focusing on the way that you organize your workers and your staff at the plant. That's definitely a good one, right? As we're looking at new ways that we modernize our plant, it's not just our processes, the people are a huge part of this too. So yeah, absolutely understanding the way that your people fit into those manufacturing goals is always going to be a big one. All right, so feel free to keep on typing things into the chat, and I'll take away and maybe mention some of that later if it comes up. Let's kind of talk about a couple of challenges and things that might inhibit us from actually committing to these digital transformation strategies. So a couple of things that we see quite a bit that have held up commitments to digital transformation. One of the top problems is too many pilots, not enough rollouts, and that can take a lot of different forms, right? Maybe your organization has tried to implement a technology or concept like OEE or say mobile tech more than once, but it never really seems to take off across the organization. Or maybe your plants are using their budgets and their time to run little experiments under the radar, hoping that once they get some results, they'll be able to show those off and get funding. The result of these is the same. It's good time and energy and ideas put into a concept that doesn't necessarily get the organizational backing needed to reap the potential benefits. So it's dangerous when it poisons the water on these good ideas, when people start to get reluctant to bring forward the improvements that they see to the organization because that never works or people don't want to listen to me. We need to have a framework for success to help decide what concepts we want to move forward with in a more strategic way. Another common issue that we see is just around decision paralysis, right? So this can take the form of, people saying maybe we know that we need to improve, but we just don't know where to start. Or maybe we have goals for how we want to change in 5 years, but we don't know how to pick the right path to get there. It's really frustrating. I understand that, to have that desire and that vision, but to not have the action to follow up on it. The final challenge I'll mention is the idea that companies don't necessarily want to invest in the type of upfront planning and strategy activities, especially in the manufacturing sector. They seem to love to bring in consultants to the C-suite, but not necessarily down to the plant floor, right? I think there's a lot of contributing factors to that mentality, including being burned by expensive consultants in the past with no payoff, or the feeling that people need to see something to believe in it and put that effort into a plan. And I know that there's some modern trends in procurements that are very focused on having a tangible payback. And of course, just everyone being busy doing their day jobs all the time. So definitely some major common hurdles that we see all the time. But you're here in a webinar about the value of strategic planning. So I'm assuming that some of these points resonate with you. And we're going to talk about kind of how to overcome some of those hurdles across the webinar. And part of that is envisioning what a future without some of those hurdles looks like, right? So what if you start having successful pilots and plant managers and other stakeholders start to proactively reach out to you and bring that technology into their plants? What if it becomes easier to make go and no-go decisions on projects based on criteria that you knew provided feedback back into the business? And what if your planning activities aren't judged in isolation, but they're considerations for the implementation and the risk mitigation and the reduction of sunk costs are all wrapped up into the value of that strategic plan? So that sounds like a pretty good situation to be in, right? So having a good strategic plan is absolutely one of the best ways that we can get there. So a quick recap. The idea of what we're trying to do today is how we take these ideas of digital transformation and turn them into action. That the idea of Industry 4.0 and all of the other equivalent terms aren't going away. These are necessary, and we need to figure out how we're going to adapt to them. There's a lot of roadblocks that keep us from realizing the technologies and this value, but the idea of a world without those roadblocks sounds pretty great, and having an aligned strategic plan absolutely helps to get you there. So let's do another check-in and let's kind of get to the chat again. I want to know if some of those points that I had and those common challenges resonate with you. Is one of those the things that's holding you back, or are there other reasons that your company is having a hard time committing to digital transformation? I won't maybe read off answers for that right now, but please do kind of type those things into the chat. That absolutely helps me to help you, because that lets me know about the hurdles that you guys face and how we can help to overcome them. So, good stuff. We spent a lot of time setting up the stage. Now we're going to, drum roll please, we're going to get more into the takeaways that we discussed at the beginning of the session now. We're going to go more into depth on aligned digital transformation strategies, and we're going to talk about tips for these strategic plans. We're going to talk about why strategic alignment is so important for smart manufacturing projects in particular, and the enterprise level nature of these projects and how it changes conversations about budgeting and procurement. We're also finally going to talk about a couple of common deployment strategies so you can envision how this might start to work for your company. Everybody ready? Let's get to it. So let's first start by just defining what I'm talking about in these digital transformation strategies, right? And it's pretty simple, really, if you kind of break it down. It answers the 5 basic questions of any mystery that we've talked about for years, which is the who, what, when, where, why, and maybe a little bit of the how of how we want to do our digital transformation. I know that's a little bit cliche, but it's one of those things that I find to be cliche for a reason. Answering these questions is just the way that we explain these things to each other and get everybody on the same page and aligned with what we want to do with our digital transformation. Again, I don't recommend that we focus too much on the how at this point in the strategy, and that's because I think of the how as being more of your functional documentation and your design specifications that come a little bit further down in the road. If we spend too much time talking about the how in this stage, I feel like we're never actually going to get out of the strategy. So we want to think about it and talk about it a little bit, but we're more focused on those W questions in this stage. And this starts usually pretty high level, stating your mission for digital transformation in a way that's going to be accessible to all potential readers. And it's going to talk about the business goals that this is meant to align to, which I'm going to talk about a lot more in a little bit. And then we get into the meat of the document, right? We like to start with any major requirements that one should keep in mind as we're reading through the rest of the strategy. I'll give you a good example of that. For example, we just did a digital transformation strategy with a customer where their pilot plant was doing all continuous processing for their manufacturing operations, but we knew that some of the rollout plants had discrete and batch processes too. So that's an important thing to consider as you start thinking about these projects, because it can influence your entire design. We also like to include a gap analysis, right? Showing you where you are and where you're going and how you're going to get there. Again, something I'll get into a little bit more later. We use that to inspire our list of projects, initiatives, and core concepts. And this is where you get to see a lot of more variety kind of from manufacturer to manufacturer across these. Those projects become your technical drivers. Those are your network upgrades, maybe your MES projects and things like that. And it's important that there's non-project concepts in there too. They also could be important elements to your success. Maybe a part of your strategy involves bringing cloud computing to the shop floor. Probably not a project in itself, but then again, a good note and kind of thing to consider as you're looking at some of these other projects. One of the other things that I've seen come up a couple of times in those core concepts is the idea of something like a central governance board or center of excellence group to oversee plant projects from a central location and a core team. If that's going to be important to your strategy, it should be in your strategy documents. The document should also cover some very high-level implementation plans and financial expectations. This is your Gantt charts, your J-curves, and some ROI information. Both are going to be significantly refined over time as more information becomes available, which brings me to another good point that this is going to be iterative. This is something where you're going to plan to update the plan as you get more information, as projects progress, and potentially to handle things like changing stakeholder groups or different priorities that come into your business. It can be one or more documents. It's kind of just whatever the way that you want to structure it and however that makes sense to you. I usually do it in a couple of stages where maybe a business goals document comes in first and then some more implementation strategies afterwards. But that kind of, again, depends on how your company likes to see things. I also think that it's important to mention that this is going to involve a good amount of content as a result that comes out of the strategy sessions and group meetings that we're all going to work on together through this process. I like to structure my digital transformation strategies to be around 5 years in scope. I think that that's around the right, that feels right to me. Anything past 5 years and you have a hard time kind of predicting the way that the technology landscape is going to change. Anything shorter than 3 years and you really don't have enough time to realize the full potential and value of the initiative that you're talking about. So 5's about right. 3 to 5 is generally the range that I would accept. It should also make sure that you consider your entire enterprise, or at least have a region. This goes beyond a single plant, and it really should be transformative for your entire company. So a lot of these, and frankly, a lot of the pilot projects you have, the ROI on those is going to be really long if the pilot is considered in isolation. So you want to think about multiple sites, multiple line rollouts, and that's where you really start to hit some more compelling ROI numbers. And then one of the most important things about this also is it needs to be available to people. So that means available internally to your team, externally to technology vendors that you're considering, or to systems integrators like me. This doesn't need to be a secret. You have NDAs with all of these people, so your digital transformation strategy shouldn't be leaking out to your competition, but getting those people that are going to help you along this journey, if they're going to be helping you, clearly they need to understand what your goals are and how you're going to get there, right? So that's how you get all of the people that the people that are contributing to this plan on the same page and aligned. And that means I finally hit it. I got to one of my main points today, which is around alignments, right? So this whole digital transformation strategy, so much of it is just about alignment, understanding what your senior leadership from the business expects from manufacturing operations, not just today, but in the future. And given those goals, how do we want to change, adapt, and create something that makes that happen and impresses those suits that manufacturing is a critical, well-oiled part of the machine, that it's supporting the entire business. And again, it's not just alignment between your C-suite and your digital transformation teams. We're talking about alignment with plant managers, with implementation teams, and integrators as well. This plan needs to be read, understood, and considered by all the decision makers to make sure that decisions they're making align with your business and the strategy overall. And really that saves you a lot of time, pain, and effort down the road, right? Because you don't need to get involved in every decision that needs to happen. Your thought process around digital transformation is literally on paper for people to read and understand and use to make the right decision. This way, you get to spend your time focusing on the hard and challenging questions instead of repeating the same easy answers over and over again. I really, again, can't stress enough the importance of alignment to the business goals. For a long time in manufacturing, it's really just been make things cheaper and focus on, and that's been the focus for financial success. But there's a lot of other core values that digital transformation can support, right? So sustainability, for example, is a theme that we see more and more. And there's a lot that manufacturing can do to support that, from energy consumption monitoring to waste reduction. Actually, I saw somebody message that energy consumption was one of their main goals for their 5-year manufacturing plan. Another big one that we see a lot now is around supply chain optimization, reducing inventories and delivering things to customers faster. And satisfying goals like that, like sustainability or supply chain optimization, might not make things directly cheaper when you look at it from a plant financial perspective, but it provides real value to your business when you look beyond those 4 walls of the plant. So as we're talking about this alignments, really what we're kind of getting to, if we look back to those questions at the beginning, is we're answering the why questions. We're saying why we're doing our digital transformation and how it's going to support our business, right, in the most efficient and effective way. So talked a lot about alignments. I'm probably going to talk about it again a little bit later too, but let's kind of move beyond that point and talk about what else goes into these digital transformation strategies. So one of the important parts of any digital transformation strategy is gap analysis. It's tough to execute on a strategy for where you want to go if you don't know where you are today, right? So unfortunately, it's not uncommon for us to find out that the current state of affairs isn't always that well understood. How confident are we that the data that we get from our automation systems is accurate? What's the state of connectivity that you have on the shop floor? What are people spending their time on today that could be turned into more valuable, value-added work? We usually find there's a significant amount of work required to get ready for digital transformation. And if remediating that isn't part of your plan, you're just going to start to run into issues before you really get started. So you need to, if you need it, you need to take the time to do some readiness assessments and take good stock of where you're at today. Then we get to more of the projects and initiatives piece of this, right? So once we have our gap analysis, we know where we are and we know where we want to be, all aligned to our business goals. Then we start figuring out how we're going to get there, right? So projects could include things like new platform installations and rollouts. Again, initiatives could be something like that governance board that I mentioned early. Another couple of things that I see missed in that sometimes would be to include more planning activities. Remember, this strategy is meant to be iterative, and there's usually a couple of smaller, more targeted strategy sessions that you're going to need along the way. Examples could include investigations on how to connect to islands of automation or data integrity projects to make sure that information that you're getting from the shop floor is accurate. Or another one is always a rollout blueprinting, right? If you've done a pilot at one plant, usually it's not just a direct copy paste to put it into another plant, and you need to do some investigation beforehand to make sure you're applying that in a strategic and well thought out way. So I usually like to start out with kind of a list and some high level scopes for each of these items, which can really help us out for the next step, which gets us to more of the implementation planning, right? So how are we going to take all this work and turn it into something that actually happens, right? So we'll need to think about the order of operations, when our dependencies and our priorities across different projects and initiatives, how those are all going to tie together. We start to map this out on a timeline and things like Gantt charts as well, right? This is also a really good time to work on your stakeholder identification and start to think about who you need in the room for what stages of the program, both at the plant level and at the corporate level. This is also where you start thinking about how you're going to manage pilots and rollouts and how each of those types might be different. There's really kind of two common strategies that we see around this, which would be either a factory of the future or a targeted pilot strategy. Let me go into that a little bit more, actually. So what I usually see is kind of two different types of these ways that you can roll out these projects. Factory of the future is more of we're going to take our entire picture for digital transformation and we're going to make this one, we're going to implement everything over here at this factory, versus taking a bunch of different initiatives that you have in that plan and saying, I'm going to pilot different technologies at different plants based on what their highest priority need is. And there's really pros and cons to each of that, right? One of the reasons I like the factory of the future model is that you end up bringing together a very strong core team that's really good at figuring out how to implement new technologies there, which is going to drive down cost of implementations. On the other hand, the nice thing about having those targeted pilots is that you're giving immediate value to the biggest pain points of a lot of those plants right off the bat. So definitely pros and cons to each. Just think about what's going to work best for your company. Another thing that we usually include in one of these transformation strategies is just to start to get into the financial estimations piece of this, right? So there's going to be a lot of assumptions at this early stage, and it's going to be really important to note those assumptions as you make them, as you need to go through and iterate on those plans down the line. You're definitely going to want to know what the assumptions went into that process. I also think it's important to talk about kind of the different types of benefits that we see, and this can also be really important as you are quantifying and presenting things to procurements, right? So we all know that we want to focus on those hard benefits, right? So those are the direct things that show up on your financial reports as a clear line item, right? Things like reducing material cost or increasing throughputs. But I think that it's just as important to at least think and start to try to quantify the soft benefits and the qualitative benefits as well. So soft benefits include things, the main soft benefit you're going to run into is people focusing more on value added work, right? So automating those things that people are just spending a lot of time writing down or re-entering from a piece of paper into a computer, that shouldn't be a main part of their job. There's other things that they can be doing that's going to provide more value into your business. Qualitative benefits is always an interesting one too, right? So establishing customer confidence is one of the most important qualitative benefits that we see out of digital transformation, right? Your customers knowing that you're going to consistently and reliably be delivering high quality products. How do you put a price on that? It gets a little bit tough, but it's definitely a benefit that comes out of this that we want to consider. So different procurement groups want to see this type of information differently, but you definitely want to make sure that you're considering all of it. Just really show the value of what you're getting out of the digital transformation plan. A couple of just other miscellaneous tips that I wanted to mention are things that I wanted to make sure that people considered. One of them is that this does take multiple years and multiple projects to implement these digital transformation strategies. It's not just a one-off thing, and it's not just one little fixed price block. it's going to take you a while. So just make sure that you plan for that. Make sure that you have a technology implementation plan for your legacy equipment, right? The things that are older, maybe they don't have Ethernet connectivity, things like that. What's going to be your plan for those situations? And another very important one that I find is bringing in other projects to specification. So what do I mean by that? Look, you're not going to stop all of the other projects that you guys have or the other things that you need to get done because you have this new digital roadmap, right? So how do you make sure that those projects are being done in a way that they can be easily integrated into the program later, right? And a lot of the way that you do that is through specifications. For example, are you committing to OPC UA as a communication protocol? Or do you need your recipes formatted in a certain way to support your master data strategy? If you have priorities like that, write them down, turn them into specifications, make sure that you're providing those to project managers and OEMs for these other projects so that they're not behind the 8 ball before they even hit the floor. I also want to talk a little bit about a funding plan for funding the plan. So these strategic plans and putting them together takes time, it takes money, standards, consultants, training, and there's an expense associated to a lot of that. And sometimes that can be really tough to get through procurement because, as I said earlier, they want to see direct value and direct ROI out of any spend, and that can make funding planning activities tougher. So one of the ways that I kind of recommend trying to get around that is to say, present it as a part of the larger plan as you start to kind of put together some of those high-level financial estimates, include the plan as a part of that, and really just try to emphasize that the value is there across risk reduction, less sunk cost, better prioritization towards the values of the business. Again, this is a thing that's really, the money is there. There is certainly a lot of value to these planning efforts. It's just the way that you have to present that to your procurement groups and the people that hold the purse. I also like to say that this does really need to be a conscious effort. This shouldn't be something that is someone's little side job on their desk. It's going to take a lot of stakeholders. It's going to take a lot of effort and planning. So it needs to be a conscious effort to move forward and be successful. So I've gotten pretty far to a webinar about digital transformation without actually talking about any technology yet. So let's talk about that. And when does actually talking about technology come into the conversation? Again, I see two common methodologies in this, and it's important to figure out the one that's going to fit your business the best. And really, a lot of it kind of comes down to, are you willing to change the way that your business works to fit the technology stack? Or do you want to craft the technology to make sure that it fits with your business, right? And again, there are pros and cons to each of that, right? So if you pick your technology stack early, you're more likely to need to change some of your business processes to fit the tech you've selected. But that might not be the worst thing, right? Some of these technology stacks are built on modern best practices or on some standards that are out there in the industry. And actually the advice and the influence they have on your business could really be for the better and get you to fix up some things that have really been historically embedded in your process for a long time for maybe not the right reasons. The other way to do it is, of course, to do more of your planning up front and then figure out the technology stack that's going to have the best out-of-the-box fit and the best ability to customize it to suit your specific needs. So again, either way, I want to make sure that we start with our business goals and alignments to those business goals before we talk about technology at all, right? So the goals of your business and what you want to accomplish, those aren't going to change by the technology that comes in. The technology is going to enable you to hit those goals, right? So no matter what, start with the business goals and alignment, then you can figure out if you want to talk about technology early or later. So let's do another quick recap. Our strategic plan starts out with our company strategy and then starts to interpret that strategy to understand our manufacturing goals. Alignment is key. I actually get $1 every time I say the word alignment in this presentation, and it shows. This digital transformation strategy is answering the basic questions, right? The why, what, when, where, who, and how of the plan, and it is bigger than one plant and needs to be this conscious effort with funding aligned to it. And that funding should be aligned to the eventual outcomes that you're getting, not necessarily the document that is the plan itself. And then we get to another question time, which is good because I need a sip of water. So tell me, what have you learned so far? What elements of a digital transformation strategic plan and the things that I've talked about would be new to your organization, or some of those things that you know to do, but you're not always the best at doing, right? So again, put things in the chat. If I see some answers come in on the fly, I'll kind of read them off to you guys, but otherwise, maybe it's something I bring back later into the Q&A. Just seems to be a little bit of a lag in my timing to get some of the questions. So just take a couple of seconds. All right, cool. Well, thanks for those responses. We'll get back to that more in a little bit. So you have a bit of a decision to make. We can go along with the status quo. We can continue to generate lots of ideas and projects and pilots, and we might stumble on the right thing eventually. But you also might find a platform and choose and commit to something that really just wasn't the right fit and didn't provide the value that you wanted. So I propose that the other side of that decision is the better one, which is to look more towards strategic planning, right? It takes upfront investment and commitments, but you know that the projects that come out of it are going to align to your business goals, right? And that's going to result in less rework, less frustration, and more results. Also, maybe I'll go back really quickly. I do have a couple of these coming in. One of the things I'm seeing is around kind of reinforcing this idea that this does need to be in a document and really kind of put forth to everybody. That's great. That's some really good feedback. Thanks a lot for that. So let's talk maybe a little bit more about how Grantek can actually help with these road mapping solutions and why you might want to come to Grantek for it. So we do the full stack of this ISA 95 model, right? From level 0 all the way through level 4 and all the connectivity in between. So that means the automation systems, the SCADA systems, the MES systems, and even some of the ERP configurations that you might need to help with this. We are familiar with working all these and we do it every day. We have a lot of consultants and subject matter experts whose job it is to stay current with the latest tech and have an idea of what works and what doesn't when you actually apply it beyond just the marketing material that's out there. So if you all bring your business and an understanding of your processes, we'll bring our expertise around digital transformation generally to the table. The plans that we have around this, they're designed to, again, take those ideas and turn it into a strategic plan. We do a 3 to 5 year plan for digital transformation that includes automation and networking and the other upgrades that are going to be required to support the overall process. As an option, we can help you out with some of those ROI and financial justification studies. Really, our goal here is to create a great plan that's going to help you succeed in achieving those goals. If you've ever been in a presentation with me, you've seen this slide. This is our Industry 4.0 road mapping solution. We go through these blocks. Sometimes some of the names change to adapt to the ways that things come through, but the process generally stays the same. We start with some on-site discovery. The output of that is your user requirement specification or those high-level business goals. Usually that's when we recommend start to looking at vendors and figuring out how those different technology vendors are going to fit your business requirements. Then we get into more specific requirements around functional mapping, and then we get to the fun part where we start doing designs and pilots and things like that. I'll also talk briefly about some of the financial justifications that we do. So we do follow MESA International guidelines for how to do financial assessments for smart manufacturing projects. We evaluate both projects and entire programs, so to make sure that you're seeing the ROI across multiple projects and pilots and rollouts and things like that across different plants. We do all the stuff that your procurement wants to see, ROIs and IRRs and net present values and things like that. So we calculate all that as well. And it's also just important to note that this involves some workshopping with your team, and it does involve like access to some higher level financial data. I can't really attach a dollar value to saving you 2% on material costs if I don't know what your material costs are, right? So that's just a little bit more about Grantek's offering. And let's kind of get to the call to action on this, right? So really what I want you to do is I want people to start thinking about your digital transformation strategy today and think about how you can start to apply some of this to your company. You can go with Grantek. You can send us an email at info@grantek.com to follow up with me and Jeff after this webinar, or you can plan internally. That's fine. I'm not gonna, I won't cry too much about it. If you are planning internally, I really highly recommend that you look at resources from MESA International and from the ISA, specifically ISA 95. They're just really good resources that you can use to help you plan that journey. And with that, we are kind of getting to the end. I'm going to open it up for some other questions. If people have things that they want to talk about, just put those over in the chat, and I'll go ahead and answer what I see. All right, got some of them coming in. What is the MES platform that we service? Wonderware, Rockwell, or Siemens? Good question. So Grantek is generally, from an implementation standpoint, we have certain people that are trained in different ones of those platforms. So we have some people that know definitely all of those major players and some other ones that aren't mentioned there either. We really try to stay vendor neutral as we do these digital transformation strategies. So that part of it really, hopefully the technology vendor piece of it doesn't come in on. And once we actually do go through that planning stage and that kind of upfront consulting part of the project, maybe we're the correct implementer for you, maybe we're not, maybe we kind of remain in kind of that thought leadership and consulting role. There's a lot of different ways that we can roll it. So of those major players, them and some others, we've done implementations across all of them. We're not specifically aligned to any of them. Good question. Okay, I have a question. Someone's saying that they really believe in what we're saying, but they just have really struggled to try to get their management on board, and if there's any tips that we can use to kind of help motivate that at the management level. So another great question, something we run into a lot. I might say some of the contents that we have on our website at Grantek, between white papers and webinars like this, showing that might kind of help to move them along. Again, also looking at things like MES International, they have a lot of really good resources over there that could also kind of help along that. So the other thing is that you can always use me and Grantek as a resource. If maybe you're having issues communicating that with your leadership, maybe they just want to hear it from somebody else who's been seeing more things in the industry. So if you feel that that is really the hurdle that is holding you back, and you think that there's an opportunity potentially for Grantek to help out, please, again, use that info@grantek.com or reach out to the other people that you know, and we're happy to jump in and try to help out as much as we can. Sorry, this is a long question. Okay, so not as much of a question, but kind of just someone reinforcing kind of some of the messaging that we have in a way that I think makes a lot of sense. Someone talking about how currently they're really at level 0, really haven't made a lot of progress towards digital transformation, and then their management comes up and says, we want Industry 4.0, give me Industry 4.0, and then kind of walks out of the room, right? It's a thing, again, that I see all the time. And yeah, what I would say to them is to maybe look back at some of those slides that I had around the different value drivers for Industry 4.0, and maybe that can help to show them more of the detail that you're looking for, right? Are we talking about highly customized products, lot size of 1? Are we talking about lower time to market or better new product introductions? There's a lot of different values that the Industry 4.0 technologies can support for you and your team. And yeah, I think that kind of I think if you start asking those bigger business questions to those types of people, that is the language that they're more used to talking, and that might key off some things to them too. So a couple of tips there. Hope that that's helpful. Okay, I have another quick question around if there's just any other videos or material that we can find online to help guide us across the digital journey. Yes, absolutely. I would actually kind of look back to those 2 resources I had earlier. So sorry, well, first of all, I should promote Grantek a little bit. We do have a lot of information on there across our website, between our white papers and our blogs, videos like this. That's always a good place to start. But if you want more beyond that, that mesa.org site I mentioned earlier is a great resource. If you're not familiar, MESA International is an international organization that does bring together thought leadership around smart manufacturing initiatives. So they're a really great place to look, and they have a lot of working groups and material online that you can use to access and start to get along that journey. Oh man, it took until the 4th question, but it did come up. Okay. So I was definitely expecting this. How much does it cost for Grantek to actually go through and do our road mapping exercises? And I need to do the consulting thing again. It really can depend. I actually also can't really share that directly on the webinar because some of our competition is actually on the line from some of the email addresses we saw sign up. So hello, everybody. Hope you all learned something too. But yeah, so definitely reach out to us, info@grantek.com, to start to talk more about kind of how we can structure a proposal for you. And one of the reasons that it depends is that it can really change based on the scope of what we want to do, right? Are we looking at one plant? Are we going to go and tour multiple plants for on-site discovery? Do we want to do the ROI and justification or not? So there's just kind of a lot of what ifs that factor into that, but we're happy to sit down and talk to you about that a little bit more. And Jeff is telling me that it looks like that is the last major question that came in the door. So, excellent. In that case, I will let you all go and get back to the rest of your days. Thank you all so much again for taking the time to come out here and join us today. And again, if you want to follow up on any of this with me and Jeff and the wider Grantek team, please feel free to reach out to the people that you work with at Grantek every day, or email info@grantek.com, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. And with that, I'm going to conclude the webinar. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.